Tech Talk Tuesday. Tech Talk Tuesday, number 141. We are only 11. No? How far are we away? 56? Yeah, that's 6 and 9. 15 episodes away. I think 2 weeks away. That's crazy. Can't be that much. I might be wrong. But we've been doing it for over 2 years. In our third year now. Yeah. Anyway, Tech Talk Tuesday, number 141. I wanted to share with you guys. I got some info to talk to you guys about. Hey, Greg. Hey, Brian. Hey, Steve. Thanks for coming in here. Yes, sir. Hear me loud and clear. Daryl, somebody give me a... There they come. Chad, how you doing, man? Brad, good. Brian, good to see your bike running there. And a male. Hey, Steve. Brett, thank y'all for coming in. I appreciate all these lookups. There's Jackie. I saw Jackie's face pop up. How long you gonna watch, Jackie? Till you see how I'm doing and then jump off? Hey, Ed. Hey, Brian. Hey, Kevin. Chuck. Thank you, Chuck, for the heads up. I can hear you. Billy. Yeah, man. It's good to hear you. Good to see you. Good to be here. Before I get started, I'll show that I got my Jaws socks on today. Yep. These are some big old shark socks. Hey, Chris. Yeah, those shark socks. That's, hey, Ben. You know, God loves sharks too, man. Part of the circle of life. Whatever a shark eats, man, we'd have too much of them if the sharks weren't out there. Hey, Brian, Darren, Donald, Theodore, Ricky. Good to see you, Ricky. Theodore. Hey, Mr. Bryce. Yeah, stay safe. Yeah, we had some crazy storms. Thank you, Chris, for checking in. Cameron. Yep. I see you guys looking on here. James. Good to see y'all, man. G3. That's funny, man. So, let's see if I can get this up just one notch to get a little bit more screen in here. How about that? Yeah, that's better. Hey, Phil. Charlie, thank you for tuning in. Charlie, I count on you, man, like setting a clock. Eric. It's 5 o'clock in Tennessee, just after 5:03 or 4. 6 o'clock in, hey, George Baber, my buddy, Matt, Doug, Eric, over there at Charlie, over in Georgia, and up through the East Coast. I think it's 6 o'clock. Thank y'all. Ricky, hi, y'all, David, and Doug, good deal. And over here in the Central Time, I think we're like after 5, and then they go over somewhere else west of us. I think they call it Mountain Time, and then I think they call it California Time. I don't really know what they call it, Pacific Time. And then Hawaii, I don't know how many hours that is. But I do know going the other way, my friends in Finland and England and all those different European countries that I'm thankful on here. Hey, Charlie. Hey, Jack. Good to see you guys on here. Those folks are already at night, you know. Some of them are dinner time. Some of them are sitting down for the evening. Stevie. But I got some camshaft stuff to tell you all about. I hope you're not bored about cams because every day I work on this stuff. I realize how many people have their opinion or their ideas of what's going on here. And my job, I believe, is to break it down into some words and some understanding that regular folks like us can catch on to. The internet and the cam people, the camshaft scientists and the camshaft designers and all those folks that are, you know, they're smart, man. They speak a different language and they talk numbers and names that I've never even, it'll be a while before I start using in my daily rhetoric is to use a word like polynomial or stuff. That's some big words that I don't know how to use yet, so I'm not going to use it. I just wanted to tell you all that there's some really cool stuff that I believe the gift the good Lord gave me about how to translate some of that scientific and mathematic jargon into regular folks thinking like me. And I'm going to tell you what I think I know here, and it sure seems to be popular because, let me say again, my opinion is not popular sometimes because it goes against the grain of the engineers and the know-it-alls and the folks that have been doing it forever. And if you say something different than what they've been doing forever, they get kind of mad about it, or they get their feathers ruffled up or their hair on the back of their neck or whatever. But my job is not to impress anyone. It's just to share what I think I know. I don't have anybody really coming behind me to pick up where I left off. I've been chasing this dream about how to figure out how to make more horsepower out of normally aspirated and nitrous oxide supercharged, turbocharged internal combustion engines. And that's a passion for me. I've lived my whole life chasing it, and I've developed a lot of information and opinions that I love sharing with you guys. So enough of all of that. This is an interest. Oh, we have a cam we sell. It's called a 650 Thrasher, and it's 250 on the intake and 260 on the exhaust. Nope. Look at there. I just caught myself that quick. It is a 240 at 50 and 260 on the exhaust. Man, that was quick. I must mean I'm listening to myself. Yeah, how to make horsepower out of thin air. It's all about trapping air and fuel and using it to generate power and heat. But this, I want to tell you real quick about this 240 by 260. That's 240 at 50 thou lift on the intake and 260 at 50 thou lift on the exhaust. This lobe, the pair of lobes, any of these will fit perfect in a big block Chevrolet, a small block Chevrolet, a Chrysler, a Ford, a Rambler, American Motors, a Honda, a Kawasaki. This lobe, once you build this lobe with a certain base circle with a little roller wheel on the lifter or a bucket in your double overhead cam with the type 1 tappets cam on top, these lobes have no idea what kind of engine they're in. A 240 at 50 with, say, 650 lift will fit perfect. And guess what? Every cam company sells one for a Chevrolet, Chrysler, Ford, and all those other engines. 650 lift. That's a great cam. That fits. But this particular one that I'm using as an example is this lobe combination fits in the twin cam Harley Davidson. Now, if you don't have a twin cam Harley Davidson, I understand. Everybody doesn't have one. Everybody doesn't have an M8. Everybody doesn't have a Harley, but everybody's got. If you're on here and you're watching, you're interested in how these engines work. And I want to share this with you. This is not about a Harley. And if that makes you upset, I'm sorry. This is about engines and how to trap air and fuel as a mixture and to squeeze it as tight as we can and then light it when we want to light it and let it convert to crankshaft rotation and make some power. And that works on just about every kind of normally aspirated or blown, supercharged, or nitrous oxide injected internal combustion engine. Wow, what a mouthful. Now, this is going to be a little bit, I mean, most everybody's seen these before, the graphs of the lobes, and this is going to be a little bit maybe confusing, but let's try and break it down and make it less confusing. This is an intake lobe, and this is an exhaust lobe, and this is the crankshaft degrees of rotation. Ben Schrader did a great job, I think, last week or week before last on using this style to talk about, and this was right out of the cam design of the 650 Thrasher, and I want to share something with you different. The difference between this and this is rocker arm ratio. This is a graph versus rotation and lift. This is the lift, and this is the rotation of the crankshaft. And this is how the lobe on the camshaft looks. And if you put a 1.63 rocker arm on top of this lobe, you get this lift. So this is the lobe lift in the engine, and this is the valve lift after the rocker arm. Now, that's debatable because there's a lot of deflection, and Ben talks a lot about it. He's got a spintron, and few people do. Maybe 30 or 40 people have a spintron, and they can spin this stuff up and see what it's like and what really happens. But the dyno tells me how much power I got, and the ET slip at the racetrack tells me how fast I went, and then I can sort of use that to say, wow, that much horsepower on my dyno or the one I used to have or your dyno makes this much power, and this much power well driven and well applied to the racetrack can generate this kind of performance. And that's where I'm at right now. But I wanted you all to know that this, and I have a little data sheet here that says that this lobe is what does that say? 398. That's almost a 400 lift lobe. And with the rocker ratio, that lobe generates 648 lift. Here's a good example. Here's what it is. There's the lobe, add the rocker ratio to it, 1.63. So this lift times 1.63 equals this lift. And what's interesting about it is you'll look back here at zero lift right off the seat. The overall duration is the same with and without the rock arm. They both lift at the same time, and they both close at the same time at zero lift. Now, the industry reads, man, come into view, please. The industry reads 50 lift. So we come over here at 50 lift, and the Lobe opens the valve, moves the lifter at 60 degrees. Now let's count it. 10, 30, 40, 60 degrees. I know this off the top of my head. While I'm trying to quote it, I can get mixed up. Let's go to 50, right there. 18. I see what I'm doing wrong. This is the opening over here on it. Now I see what I'm doing wrong. TDC, yeah, that's the opening rate. But what I wanted to show you is at 50 thou lift, they open at different times. The Lobe opens, moves the lifter here, but down in these low lifts, these low ramps, this opening and the closing ramps, I call it, one of them, the one that opens, I call it the launch ramp, and the one that closes the valve, I call it the landing ramp. And if you'll look, once you put rocker ratio to it, it really opens the valve sooner than you think it does, and it closes the valve later than you think it does. And when you buy the camshaft, this is at the lifter. This is not at the valve, y'all. This is a 240 duration at 50. And I believe, if I have to guess off the top of my head, I believe this opens at 20 before and closes at 40 after. And this one closes at, this one opens at maybe, well, I have the numbers. And I know I'm flopping around because I'm live. There's a lot of people sending me text messages and stuff talking about their bikes and all their cool stuff at 50. 50, here we go. 240, 19. Yep, it opens at 20. And it closes at 56. All right. At the Lobe. But we don't see anybody. Thank you, Ben. The exhaust is here, and this is the intake. Thank you, Ben. Great point. So I've got my intake over here. This is my intake opening. That just about got me jacked up, didn't it? Yep. So this is his engine, and he lost cranking compression. But what was happening when he lost cranking compression was his rocker ratio jacked him up a little bit. Why do some manufacturers check at 20? Well, that gives them more duration, so they're more powerful on the internet. They're more powerful in the catalog. But you got to pick a number you like. Like I compare all my cams at 50 lift so that I can look at them and see what the numbers are, where I'm opening the valve at 50 before and where I'm closing the valve at 50 after or whatever. I'll use the 50 thou lift. In our industry, mostly our Harley-Davidson industry uses the 50s. And if you buy from Comp Cams and Crane and some of the other really cool cam companies, they have listed on their in their information 50 lift and 50 before and 50 after to get their duration. Now, I want to say that I'm going to draw a little picture and see if I can help this make more sense to you. But if we have a Lobe, and we open it at 50, the valve opens 50 thou, and I know I talked about this the other day, but I didn't expand on it well, and it closes at 050. That means the valve has just opened off the seat over here, and it has opened up to 50 off the seat, and they start counting the duration here, and then it comes back down on the closing ramp, and it's 50 off the seat before it touches the head, and they stop duration here. So the duration they're listed is from here to here, and it comes up to 240. But in reality, if you put the launch ramp in it, the takeoff ramp, and you put the landing ramp in it, and the valve is 1 thou off the seat, you start counting the duration here, and it's 1 thou off the seat at the close, and you start counting the duration here, the 240 goes to about 370 duration. Now this right here just blows my mind, because on our engines, we only have 720 degrees to get things done. As you know, we have 180 of intake, we have 180 of compression, and we have 180 of power, and then we have 180 of exhaust, and that gives us 720, which is 180 times 4. That gives us the 4 strokes that we need. We need intake, we need compression, we need power, and we need exhaust. I just told you that the intake valve was open for 370 degrees. Now, that's at 1 thou lift, and we don't measure it that way, but your engine sees it that way, y'all. The engine doesn't know what this means. The engine doesn't know what 240 at 50 means. The lifter, the valve, the head, the flow, the piston, the crankshaft, the rod, everything sees what's really happening here, and this is where I'm trying to go. When this valve comes off the seat, when you start lifting it, whatever pressure is going on inside the cylinder, it starts leaking out, or pressure outside the cylinder starts leaking in. And when the piston's going down on the intake, it doesn't start where you think it does, and it doesn't stop where you think it does. And the part that really gets me excited is the compression stroke, which is the one I'm going to talk about for a minute. Here's our 700, well, let's call this the intake stroke, where we're pulling the air and fuel in. TDC, and Ben, I saw Ben do this, and it inspired me to carry it one step further, and this is bottom, dead center. Okay, so we have TDC and we have bottom. So the intake, this is the stroke for the intake, and this is the compression stroke here. Well, in the compression stroke, you guys, while we're compressing the air and fuel mixture, we light the spark plug off. And on a 4-valve Pro Stocker, we're lighting the spark off at about 40 degrees before top dead center. Okay, 40 degrees, we're starting to build cylinder pressure. We got fire going off in there in the compressed air and fuel. We light the spark plug, and that starts trying to stop the rotation. But on our valve, air intake valve that closes at 60 after bottom, there's 90. And let's see, this is 30, 60, 90. So we close the intake valve here. And then we got this ramp, this launch ramp. That's about 50 or 60 degrees right here. So let's add, we're at 50 here, y'all. 50 before the valve, we're at 50 before the valve lands on the seat. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. We are 50 thou lift before the valve lands. Let's go another 60 degrees to land it. So we're putting the valve really on the seat here. So our compression from the time the valve goes on the seat and the spark plug lights, this is how much compression room we have. That's not much. So if you have a valve that closes late, your cranking compression at 400 RPM or your 500 RPM is really low, because this is only the amount of time you have to do it. And when cranking, you only turn this over 5 or 6 times. It goes puff, 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 and it squeezes whatever's in there this much. Now, I'll take it back and add some more, because there is no spark plug going on when you are checking cranking compression. So you get to have, from the time the valve shuts till TDC, that's how much time you get to squeeze it and get cranking compression. But when it's running, really and truly, guys, we light the spark plug over here. Maybe it's 30, maybe it's 20, but we light the spark plug in the middle of this compression. So when you're checking compression, you're getting a big number, say you're getting 200, 250, cranking at low speeds, and you're getting whatever you're getting. And then when you crank it up, you lighten the spark so early, it's stopping that compression, because it's making cylinder pressure, which is trying to stop. You got cylinder pressure pushing the piston up, squeezing it, and then you light it. And that's just like hitting it with a hammer when you build that pressure up in here to stop it from rotating. Now, let's go to a racing cam, like go from 240 at 50. Let's go to 270. And we're going to close the valve instead of closing at 30 and 60. Let's close the valve at 70 or 80. Now let's add that 60 or 70 ramp, 60 degree ramp, closing ramp in there. Now the valve lands on the seat here. This is why your cranking compression goes down, because now you only have this much time to squeeze it before TDC. So you have to turn it up now. If we turn this up to 6,000 or 7,000 RPMs, this happens 58 times a second at 6,000 RPM. So instead of at 200 or 400 RPM, it only happens 4 times a second. It can happen 58 times a second. So we go, instead of with a gauge in there, we go pow, 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 pow. We're going blah, 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 real fast. So we're packing this for full. So at the RPM where you want to run your engine, you're getting 800, 900, 700 PSI, which is way more than cranking compression. But it is a good checking point. I want to tell you guys, it's okay to check cranking compression. I understand why people do it, because it gives us a starting spot. But please understand, that's not what's happening when your engine is running, because peak torque, let's look at peak torque. Peak torque on your dyno always looks like this. I mean, torque curve always looks like this. You start here and you over rev it here, and peak torque is here. Guess what peak torque is? Peak torque is where your fuel demand will be the most. It will have the most cylinder pressure here, the most PSI. And if it has the most PSI here, so you want your cam timing to happen. You want your squeezing and compression and making the compression stroke, you want it to happen where you want peak torque. And that's controlled by these open and closing numbers. I know, man. I know I got a little complicated with it and tried to help you. But the most visual thing that I like is to see what the lobe looks like inside the engine. And then you put the lifter with the roller wheel on it and the lifter and then the push rod. And then you go up and get the rock arm. And the rocker arm accentuates and adds a lot of lift. This much lift is about 380, 400, goes all the way up to 650 with only a 1.63 rocker. Now, all the Chevrolets and all big block, small block, all of them are somewhere between 1.5, 1.55, 1.6, 1.65, 1.7, 1.75, and I've even seen some 1.8s. Our Pro Stock engine, when we were running NHRA, we ran 2-to-1 rocker, where we had a 600 lobe with a 2-to-1 rocker, which would give us 1.2 inches of lift, which is a lot. And you have to have a big lobe, you have to have a big base circle, and you have to have a big lifter wheel to be able to follow the curves. So you got to start off with a big lobe and a big lifter, a big lobe, and then be able to follow. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys. And right here we have, I'm hoping this will do it for us. Here's some real math off of this cam. At 6 thou lift, we had 336 degrees duration. At 10 thou lift, we had 315. At 20 lift, we had what does that say? 2 something. And the not advertised, but the published number at 50 lift, we have 257 degrees duration. That's only lobe. Nope, this is the lobe. 240. All right, this is a great point. At 50 lift, we have 240 degrees. At 50 lift, this cam has 240 degrees, which is what we advertise, what we sell, what's published, and what everybody knows. The exact same cam with a stock rocker ratio goes from 240 to 257. That's how much duration we're adding by putting rocker ratio. So if you add another company's super cool, bigger rocker ratios, expect your cranking compression to go down. Expect your cylinder pressure to go down at some RPM, but maybe it comes back at another RPM. This is proof right here, because people check their cranking compression at low speed and they check based on these 50 numbers that the cam has. 257 with the rocker ratio at the valve. I'll make this bigger next time I do this, y'all. I'm sorry, I kind of didn't realize it was this little. And at 50 without the rocker ratio, we had 240 duration. Does that make sense at all? I hope it does. I'll do better. Next week, I'm going to get a degree wheel, and I'm going to drive around the degree wheel on this board and share some more stuff that we've learned the hard way, and hope I can keep you guys entertained for enough minutes for me to get there. But thank you for dealing with me jumping around and trying to figure out what happens when I'm live. But we will do better. The good Lord is going to look out for all of us. Hey, pray for each other. We right now in this time of need we have in our country, we need to pray for our leaders to make the right choices and look out for us instead of themselves. I wanted to share all to you. May God bless. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.